Hey everyone, my name is Mohammed and I'm your host for Freelance Canada, a show about what it's really like to freelance in Canada. Each week, I interview Canadian freelancers and industry experts as they get candid about the ever-challenging, always exciting, and sometimes hilarious aspects of freelancing. On the show today, I'm going to talk to Alexandra Macqueen. Alexandra is a certified financial planner who teaches, advises, and writes about personal finance in Toronto as a freelance writer and advice-only financial advisor. She has a love for retirement income planning, but is interested in every aspect of personal finance at every life stage and for every person. In this episode, Alexandra and I talk about how Canadian freelancers can define the purpose of their business and use those insights to establish a business structure that's right for them. So let's get to it. Let's get started. How are you feeling so far?
Feeling great.
Well,
This is actually podcast 1 of 2 for me today.
Oh, what was the other podcast?
Yes. Oh, no, this is the first. The second one, I'm doing a podcast with a provider of financial services course materials. I work for him as a grader, and he's interviewing me about my financial services career.
Well, I guess that's a correct way of getting started and asking what is it that you do as a freelancer?
Oh, it's a good question. So, I think that part of the beauty of being a freelancer is that you are not constrained to doing just one thing. In some ways, that phrase side hustle has become like a phrase you hear everywhere. And I often think my work is just a series of different side hustles that together add up to one big hustle.
I want to know more.
Oh.
What are
all those side hustles?
Yeah.
Okay. So once upon a time, I was an investment advisor. But even before that, way back in 1996, I was a federal civil servant, but I was working on what were called these term contracts. So I wasn't a full-time permanent employee. And I had a boss who I just loved, and he left to start a consulting firm. And after, 6 months or a year, he said, I have more work than I can handle. Would you consider leaving your job and joining me? And because I didn't have this full-time, a commitment from the employer, it just seemed like, oh, sure, I would have a chance to work with this guy that I love and do things I'm interested in. So I did that. It was actually working for an Aboriginal organization on a whole variety of projects, including land claims, treaty negotiation, a Supreme Court case, and my main job was working on what was called a self-government agreement to replace the Indian Act for 7 communities all along the Trent Severn Waterway in Ontario. So I did that for about 10 years, and I was a freelancer, so I wasn't incorporated. I was just me. I worked with this guy, but we didn't have any formal business partnership. I wasn't his employee. I wasn't anybody's employee. And then I had these 2 kids, and I didn't want to travel as much. So I thought, I want to do something that can still help people. So this was kind of like my whole, I want to be a force for good. And I have always been interested in personal finance, and I thought, I'll become a financial advisor, not really even knowing what that means. And so I thought, okay, to become a financial advisor, you better get a good big designation, like something reputable that people will respect. So I thought, I'll become a certified financial planner. So I had a toddler and an infant, and every day for a year I got up at 4 or 5 in the morning, studied for a couple hours, and then was with my kids during the day. And I did these exams over the course of the year, and then I was eligible to go and work as a financial planner. And so I had this designation after a couple of years of experience. And I did become a financial advisor. And then 2008 hit. I was working as an employee. The place where I was working laid off everybody. Lots of people lost their jobs in 2008 in the financial services industry. It's really interesting how COVID is similar, except that it's so much more widespread. So if you worked in financial services in 2008, 2009, you had this kind of industry-wide shutdown, contraction, loss of employment. But if you didn't work in financial services, you probably didn't really even know anything about that. So because it was the global financial crisis, at the time, EI was extended. So I had this breathing room because I qualified for EI because I had been an employee. I got a little bit of severance from the job that I had, and I really thought, okay, what is it that I want to do? And I had been a financial planner working and doing financial plans for clients. And I love doing that. I still actually do that as one of my many side hustles. But what I really liked was putting ideas into words and communicating. How could I distill these complex topics? People think finance is very complex. How could I distill that down to empower people? I thought, oh, I'll become a financial writer. And so I launched this freelance financial writing career. It's funny because Facebook Memories just this week has been reminding me that it was 12 years ago. I said, that's it. I'm becoming a financial writer. And by sheer luck, I landed a job as a financial writer. Like, there's really not any jobs called financial writer. Well, I guess there are a few, but not many. It's not really a career you set out to do. And I got hired by this very small fintech startup. This is before people even used the word fintech. And with the CEO of that startup, I wrote a book. And because he's like very famous, the book got way more traction than I would ever get to write a book. And then I was really launched as a financial writer. And so now I do financial writing for lots of clients like banks, insurance companies, that kind of stuff. I also do personal financial planning for people who are transitioning into retirement. Like, that's the niche. I mean, everybody focuses on that niche in many ways, but I don't do like, should I buy a house, or I'm starting out in life. I do like, I've got to make a decision about my pension. Can you help me? Over the years, I've done tax preparation, like for 20 years. I don't really do that anymore, but I do help people with taxes. I'm a grader. I just mentioned that. I grade assignments for people who are trying to do the courses to become certified financial planners. I do a ton of volunteer work. And somehow I bring it all together and make what I think of as kind of like a quilt of things I'm involved in, some of which pay, some of which don't, but it all kind of comes together and fits.
I like your quilt analogy, and I'm surprised you used the word quilt rather than a portfolio of things.
Mm.
And in terms of your book, you have a few books out. Can you tell us how those came about?
Okay, so the first book, I was working for this small fintech startup that was owned by three university professors, one of whom is Dr. Moshe Milevsky, who's like really a world-renowned professor of finance at York University. And he has a not-for-profit organization called the Individual Finance and Insurance Decisions Center. And that organization had a small for-profit entity, and that's the organization that I worked for. And I guess I was working for him, and he was probably just literally just reading my emails and said, have you thought about helping me write a book? So this book that was published in 2010 is called Pensionize Your Nest Egg. So it was about, if you're somebody who doesn't have traditional employment or isn't a civil servant with a guaranteed pension to retire to, how can you create this pension-like income in retirement? How can you kind of build your own pension plan? So that was book number one. And then more recently, with another financial planner, we just wrote an updated edition of a book for Thomson Reuters called The Boomers Retire. And it's a book for funny. I know it's funny because OK Boomer, obviously, I actually have an OK Boomer sweatshirt that, if this was if you could see me, maybe I'd be wearing my OK Boomer sweatshirt. It's like, my kids laugh. It's like my favorite article of clothing. I'm not actually a boomer. I'm a Gen Xer. But this is a book for financial advisors with all of this technical information about retirement. It's so complex, right? There's so many decisions, and they're all high stakes. And they change all the time.
Yep. And I just want to go back a little bit. What was in your email?
Oh, I'm just saying, like, he probably was just looking and saying, she has a command of the English language. Like, it was probably not more complex than that.
And after the book, that's what led you to start writing more and hone in on this financial writer path.
That's right. So that company was ultimately sold to another company. I wasn't part of the sale. So I was kind of back to being a freelancer again, which is back to my quilt analogy. Quilt can be seen as kind of a feminine thing, right? Like a woman's work thing. But really for me, it's when I had kids, I didn't want to be away from them all the time. I really wanted to do something that I could be with my kids and also earn income. And so I wanted to be not in that mode of, I'm going to work 9 to 5. I mean, everybody should do what works best for them. But I really wanted to be around a lot when my kids were small. And now that they're big, I'm like, go away. But it was just a decision about kind of like work patterns through my life. I wanted to be able to, in a way, we think of retirement as the end of work, like you work and then you stop working. Being a freelancer for me has been a little bit like having a bit of retirement every year.
Can you dive into that a little bit more? What is it about it?
Like in the old school vision of retirement, and I said earlier on that retirement is really changing. This is one of the things that's changing. People had it as a very binary thing. I'm going to work and I'm working 100%, and then I'm retired and I'm working 0%. People in that old model, like if you think about kind of the conventional marketing images of retirement, it's 2 Muskoka chairs on a dock, or it's a sailboat. But it's definitely leisure. It's definitely like I'm doing quote unquote nothing. It's not active. I'm not out there volunteering for Habitat for Humanity. People have this dream of, when I won't have to go to work anymore. And one of the challenges around retirement is, if that's your model, what are you going to fill your time with? So people just envision retirement as this, leisure, I will do whatever I want. One of the things I really enjoy is food. The thing is, this may sound crazy, but I spend between 1 and 2 hours a day cooking. That's not like the norm, not part of a community of foodies where we're all doing this. This is just something I've always done. And if I want to spend 2 hours a day cooking, what it means is that I'm going to do a task and then I'm going to go to the kitchen and check something. When I get up in the morning, I start something. Maybe I'm baking bread. I'm going to check my starter, and then in an hour I'm going to punch it down, and then in another hour I'm going to put it in the oven. So being a freelancer with all these different tasks and working from home, I mean, everybody's working from home right now because of COVID, but this idea that I want to bring in all my different interests and do them all the time.
And at what point did you realize that you do have this flexibility? Or was that always part of the picture when you were thinking about becoming a freelancer? And again, you started freelancing back in 96, if I recall correctly.
I know.
So.
Yeah. It's a long time ago. So I was like in my 20s in 1996. I'd been working for a few years, but like I said, I didn't have this full-time employment. I kind of thought like I should, quote unquote, like if I should hang on and eventually maybe I'd get a full-time job offer. But I called my older brother, who he's a professor, like he's got full-time stable employment. But I was like, what should I do? You know, I've had this opportunity. If I stay, and I felt like I was kind of like, I should stay. If I stay, I'll probably get a pension and job security. And he's like, but how important are those to you really? And I was like, that's not really that important to me. Or the risk of losing it, which is, I wasn't necessarily going to get it anyway, but the risk of losing the chance at it was not enough to make me say, I'm going to turn down this unknown adventure going into this world of freelance consulting.
And when you started freelancing, you didn't register as a corporation. You were just a sole proprietor, right?
That's right. And I never have.
So 96, what's the math here? I feel like I should just know this off of my head. 24. Okay, so you're about to hit silver jubilee next year.
I'll give myself a spoon.
You've been a sole proprietor now for 24 years. And
I have had a couple of years of employment in there, but for the most part, yeah.
What was your reason for not registering as a corporation?
Well, so it's really interesting. There's lots of reasons why people should. And of course, this is something that I do actually advise people professionally on, because, I'm in that world of personal finance. So the reasons that you would incorporate There's lots of them. Sometimes for freelancers, it's a requirement a client might require. It's really common, for example, in IT consulting. Clients, so other business owners, want the people that they deal with to be incorporated, and it's largely a liability issue. They want to be protected from different lawsuits they might otherwise face. If you make a lot of money and you're able to retain it in the corporation, it's taxed at a lower rate while it's in the corporation. So you can defer tax on that income if you're not spending it. If you're pretty much spending everything you earn, other than money that you might put into a TFSA or an RSP or both, then the benefit of a corporation isn't there. It's only when you have surplus funds that you can keep in the corporation and have them be taxed at a lower rate that the benefit of the corporation is there. And additionally, when you are incorporated, you can make decisions about the type of compensation you take from the corporation. So you could choose to pay yourself a salary, you could choose to pay yourself dividends, or you could choose a mix of both. And there's tax consequences for each of those choices.
And I just want to go back once again. When you mentioned a lot of money, what is a lot of money?
Right. Good point. So normally you would look at this from the point of view of it's got to be a better option because incorporating, it's more complex, that you have to file yearly corporate tax returns. It's going to have a bigger cost than just being a sole proprietor. We talked about this earlier. You're a sole proprietor. You file one additional schedule on your tax return, the T2125, and you're done. When you're a sole proprietor, you and the business are the same. When you're a corporation, you have two taxpayers. You have you as a personal taxpayer, and then you have the corporation that's also filing its own return and paying tax. And that, like I said, that costs money, somewhere between $2,500 and $4,000 a year, more or less. So if I'm going to do this, I better have at least $4,000 worth of savings. But if I'm a sole proprietor, I can defer income by establishing an RSP. So I can put 18% of my earned income up to a specified maximum every year in an RSP. If I'm earning, let's say I'm earning $100,000, I can put $18,000 into an RSP and then pay tax on the remaining $72,000. If that's my situation, there's not really much benefit to incorporating. I might still decide to do it if I don't want to pay myself anything from the corporation. So I don't need the money for some reason. Or if I want to pay myself dividends, I don't want an RSP. Because if you pay yourself dividends, those aren't considered to be so-called earned income for RSP purposes, so you don't build up any RSP room.
And when you registered, did you register as a sole proprietor, or you didn't even register that part of it and you're like, no, I'm just going to operate?
So unless you're not operating under your own name, you don't really need to register anything. So people think, oh, I'm going to register as a sole proprietor. Actually, all you have to do, tax time comes, you have to report that self-employment income somewhere. And for a sole proprietor, it's on that T2125 form, which is just, as you know, like a one-page form. If you want to operate a business that's not your own name, like if I want to operate Moonlight Consulting Services, then I have to register that business name with the province, but that actually has nothing to do with my taxes.
And did you get a GST HST number at the same time?
I did, because the first work that I was doing as a freelancer was for First Nations organizations. And they are in the relatively unique position of being zero-rated clients. What that means is HST or GST at the time is charged, but at the rate of 0%. So I didn't collect any GST from my clients, but I could claim all of the input tax credits that I incurred as a business owner. So there's lots of times people will have US clients. US clients are also zero-rated. So that means you charge them GST at the rate of 0%, which just means you display it on your invoice. But when you have GST and you buy that printer cartridge at Staples, you can claim the input tax credit, the amount of GST that you pay as a deduction.
Right. And sometimes when people start freelancing, they probably have a job already, or they might have dived into freelancing, but they haven't yet registered or met that threshold of
Right.
$30,000 per year.
Yeah.
When should somebody think about getting a GST HST number, like at the point of when they start freelancing, or should they wait 30? Or I guess there's different, I mean, it is different for different people, but I'd love to get your thoughts.
It's an interesting question because sometimes people perceive that having an HST or GST, depending on your province, account makes you seem successful because it communicates that you've likely met the revenue threshold, at which point registration becomes not optional but required. So people think, oh, it can communicate an appearance of success. And I think that that's actually totally valid. I think that that's probably accurate. It does add administrative complexity. You now need to collect GST and you need to then remit it to the government. And you can choose one of two ways you can choose the simple or complex, the quick method or the non-quick method. And so one is less calculation than the other. If you fall into that scenario that I described, which is that you are not required to charge, but you can claim the GST credits, that's another reason to register early. Like register before you would be strictly speaking required to.
Right. But at the same time, you'll have to stay on top of all of your.
You do. I mean, there's no question that being a freelancer, there's lots of trade-offs. One of them is that you have to do more administration. Like I spend what I really think of as an astonishing amount of time on things that are not writing, right? Like I do all the invoicing, following up on invoices, organizing my books. That's all stuff that employees don't have to leave any mental overhead for. Like tax time for an employee is like once a year I gather my stuff. It's a few slips. I take it to a tax preparer and I'm done. The freelancer, this is kind of your entire business model. What is it that I can claim? What is a business expense? And people want there to be bright lines in the CRA guidance, the Canada Revenue Agency guidance, about what you can claim. And if you read all the documentation, it's like, well, it's expenses incurred in the course of doing business.
Yes.
Yes, let's talk about what is that? If I went to a movie and I really got an idea for a story, can I claim that $9? The answer is no. But
Yeah.
you can see why people would be tempted. Like, when does the business start and when does it end? That's kind of the nature of freelance life, is that it's blurred together.
Yeah. I think the biggest one is like, hey, I bought these new clothes for a talk I'm
Yeah.
doing, or I'm going for a
Yeah.
client meeting. I can write this off, right? It's like, no, no,
I
don't
know
do
that's
that.
such a good one. People ask that one so often.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a really great case where a woman's like, I'm a judge and I wear judge robes, but underneath I wear black clothing so it matches. And I want to write off the black clothing because I wouldn't otherwise wear this black clothing. It's like, no. Yeah.
Wait, so it was a judge that went to court?
Yeah, I think so. There's a tax court case, if I'm remembering it all correctly.
Over the 24 years, I mean, being a CFP, a financial writer, an author, a grader, so many different pieces of the quilt coming together. And you starting off as a sole proprietor and still to this day being a sole proprietor. But within that, how much has changed, if anything at all?
Well, I think that really nothing has changed in the sense of that simple structure of sole proprietorship has continued to serve me as I've moved through different roles. Like the thing that I'm doing now is 100% different from what I used to do. And yet that structure of sole proprietorship, I just put down, there's on the T2125, there's that industry code that describes what you do. So I used to use the one called management consultant. And now I can't even remember what I use because it's been so long since I changed it. But it's probably some version of marketing financial services. So from the point of view of Canada Revenue Agency, it's all just self-employment income that's being reported in the T2125. That's been consistent every year.
So, a lot of what you're saying, I am definitely biased because I agree with them and it is something I tell others. I do believe there are going to be people who feel conflicted because for them, being a business means to be a corporation. Uh, and I've come across way too many people that have an idea for a business and they'll go and immediately incorporate rather than even testing the idea to see if it's feasible as a freelancer or as a sole proprietor. But it's just that thought of like register your business online for like $600 now or something, like all these different companies that have popped up. And so I'm trying to understand who, or not even who, when should someone, I guess I don't even know how to articulate my
But
question.
I actually have so many thoughts about this exact issue, which is, am I a business or am I just a person who's doing all of these services that I'm charging money for? Because for me, business has this whole kind of like constellation of other particles around it. So business to me implies growth mindset. Like it's obvious that you'd want to grow year over year. And maybe you'd get an employee. And it has these kind of, for me, it has this kind of mindset and approach that actually have just been, so COVID's like, it's changing everything for everyone. I feel like we're at the point 5 months in where the surface level changes we've kind of accommodated to. And what's happening now is people are thinking about the deeper, longer term changes. So for people who are working from home, I think a lot of people are going to be like, I don't actually want to go back to an office. I like this life. I like not commuting. And what does that mean for my future? Am I staying with my employer or am I going to do something different? Like I have peers and friends and colleagues, like my next door neighbor is talking about, like, I am not stuck in Toronto anymore. I'm going to sell this house and move someplace small. And she's just one of like, there's probably 20 more people on my street having the same conversation. But for me, being a single person, a sole proprietor doing my thing is actually very different from owning a business that's separate from me. I really like the idea of I'm it and it is me. I know this is like a psychological thing, but I don't actually want there to be that separation from me, my personality, my approach, my viewpoint. That's what you get when you work with me. It's not this separate entity with a separate name and a separate tax and financial identity. It's really, you get me.
I suppose if I am a sole proprietor that has been operating a corporation, but have started recognizing that actually it's really not benefiting me because if anything I'm paying a lot of money to just keep the lights on for the corporation because there's the banking fees, there's the checkbooks, there's the extra fees from the accountants because they're going to charge me the corporation fee versus a sole proprietor, and all these other
The
uh,
minute books,
the minute
right? Like you've got
books
to do
and
everything.
annual filings or
Yeah.
all of that. And I'm recognizing that, hey, this is not feasible or this is not sustainable for me. How can I make a transition from corporation to a sole proprietor?
Well, you would just need to close the corp. And then I presume if you had clients that you wanted to continue working with, you'd need to explain to them. Instead of billing you as ABC Corporation, I'm going to be billing you as my name. I don't think that clients particularly care. But that's the thing, is that I feel like the reality of this is it's all very simple. Establishing yourself as a sole proprietorship is extremely simple. Establishing a corporation is more complex, but you could close it and just go back to the sole proprietorship. But we're not actually talking about the technical details. It's all of these other considerations. But if I do this, then what? How will people think of me? Will they still take me as seriously if I'm not incorporated? And I think that what I just described about if you want to work with me and you get me, I think like if I have a unique business idea, maybe I want to incorporate that because I want it to be like its own thing. I think that maybe the simplest way to say it is that I want to, and this sounds hokey, but it's actually so true for me, is that I want to establish a direct connection with the people in the companies I work for and with. I don't want to have it be intermediated through a corporation. Even though, that might not change anything technically about how I operate, I really just want to be self-expressed with my clients and be who I am, and I want them to know that what they've got is me and not some entity.
I suppose I could come back and say, hey, you could do that. And maybe perhaps it is just a mindset thing, unless you feel that entity existing, or the entity that you've created as a result of that just creates an extra being, and it's no
That's
longer just
really it
you.
is. Yeah, it's like it's a sole separate thing, which is kind of the purpose of incorporating. But the thing is, it's taken me a long time to get to this point. Like I was actually planning to incorporate this year.
Hmm.
Last year, I did a whole whack of things. I have a little bit of passive income, but not much. Most of the work that I do, most of the income that I earn is based on I did something to do it, right? Obviously. But I know it's everyone's dream to have passive income where you can make money while you sleep.
Yeah.
I don't really have that. I make money while I'm awake, and only when I'm awake. And it was a challenging year because I was way busier than I wanted to be. And I don't think that I would have recognized that but for COVID. So COVID has caused me, like many other people, it's put this enforced pause. All kinds of projects that I was committed to, was working on, was engaged in, stopped in March. So I found other things to do. That's not really the issue, but I didn't immediately go right back up to the level of busyness and income that I'd been earning. And 5 months in, I'm like, maybe I like it this way. Maybe this isn't the lull from which I'm immediately going to try and recover. Maybe this is how I want things to be. Now, I always worry that that sounds very privileged, like, you should just take the work as it comes and you shouldn't say no. But this is my life. It's the only one I'm going to get. I might as well design it how I want it.
Design your life. Become a
That's right.
freelancer.
That's my quilt, right? My life that I want. 2 hours of cooking a day,
Yeah.
a lot of time with my kids, and then work that fits into those other things.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah.
There's an image of freelancing as like feast or famine. Like there's all kinds of images about work, things we tell ourselves about how you should work and grind, hustle every day. But what if? What if it wasn't that way? Like if you don't want it to be that way, I mean, I'm all for the hustle. If people want to hustle, more power to them. But if you don't want to.
Sorry, I'm digesting all of this, so you can't see my face. So I'm having one of those self-reflective moments, which is great. And hopefully, when people are listening to this, they're also pausing and taking a moment to self-reflect before they resume. I really like this approach to designing your quilt, right? Like, what does your quilt look like? And it
Mm-hmm,
doesn't have to look like what someone else's quilt is.
mm-hmm.
And to each their own. And for those who are already on a freelance journey, or perhaps are now thinking of making that leap, what advice do you have for them as to think about structuring their business?
Well, it's interesting. I have spent so much time over the past 24 years getting specific coaching on what I want my life to look like. So it's not business coaching like, here's how to set up your business accounts. It's more like, what life is it that you are building? So I have always had, I mean, I don't have one at this precise moment, but over the course of the last 24 years, I have rigorously sought out coaching advice. The last time I left full-time employment, I worked with a coach to define, because I wasn't sure, like, should I leave? Should I stay? I wasn't happy where I was, but maybe I should stay in that role. It was a big role. And I came up with these criteria about how to evaluate opportunities that were in front of me. And I still refer to those criteria every day. I want to work with people that I genuinely like on projects that I am genuinely interested in, that broaden and deepen my existing knowledge, like I want to learn things, that require my specific expertise. I don't want to be a cog in somebody else's, I mean, the fact that I can still recite this, and I did that work with him, I don't know, 6 years ago. So my advice, if your question is like, where do you start? What do you do? is work with people who can help you explore for yourself. What is it that you want? What is it that you're building?
I think this is a great place to wrap up. And as we do, I'd love to know where people can find out more about you and your work online.
Yeah, well, the best place to find me is on Twitter, like with many people. My Twitter handle is MoneyGal, because here I am. I'm all things money. I have an Instagram, and it's got a funny title. It's alias Mrs. H, because I'm married. I kept my maiden name, but my husband's last name begins with an H. So my alias would be, because sometimes people call me by his last name, right?
Right.
But honestly, my Instagram is literally cats, food, and flowers.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do. I don't have a professional Instagram.
I mean, sound pretty good. But Alexandra, thank you so much for this opportunity to learn from you. I love that we're chatting on a Friday, because now I can hopefully, I actually don't even know if I have meetings after this, but I'm going to do some self-reflection, because that's the state I feel I've been now put in, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's our show for today. If you liked Freelance Canada, then be sure to subscribe to your newsletter by visiting freelancecanada.fm. You'll get access to all of my personal notes, as well as book recommendations about the topic discussed in the episode. Now, you will not find any of this on our website, so be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out. As with most podcasts, you can listen to every episode through Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. It would mean a lot if you could leave us a 5-star review. It would mean even more if you shared our podcast with another freelancer, so it can help them in their journey too. Finally, if you're tired of leaving money on the table because you don't know which of your expenses you can write off, then sign up for Benji. You can start your 90-day free trial by visiting betterwithbenji.com, because freelance life is better with Benji. Thanks for listening.